United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've lost 3 deputies in the last week. Deputy Matthew Yates, Clark County, was murdered, killed, and passed. Zane Beathard, Madison County deputy, passed from his fight with cancer. And Danny Snell, who was a mounted deputy, Madison County, also passed away. I'd like for you to join us, and let's have a moment of silence for these 3 good officers, courageous, good people. Thank you.
Thank you.
I had to think about that last.
Okay.
Was it?
Good to see everyone this evening. We'll have our roll call. Clerk, could you please take our roll
Zanes
call?
had 6 boys.
Eads,
Here.
Peters, Robinson,
Here.
Hayes,
Present.
Pitt, Stahl,
Here, present.
Smith.
Here.
Okay, so we're missing Councilman Peters and Councilman Hitt. We have 5 present, so we do have a quorum. All right, everyone had a chance to take a look at our minutes from the last meeting. All right, any changes or corrections, questions? All right, all in favor of approving those minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay. We do not have any communications or announcements. We have audience concerns.
Yes, first, Anita Likens.
Anita Likens, 157 East First Street, continuation of the Constitution and constitutional issues. I wanted to start this evening with a reading with Thomas Jefferson quote. In questions of power, then, let no more be heard of confidence in man, but bind him down for mischief by the chains of the Constitution. Now I'm going to read the second half of President Reagan's speech on the Constitution, the 200-year anniversary, presented in September 17th of 1987. All men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Until that moment, some might have said that this was just a high-blown sentiment, the dreams of a few philosophers and their hot-headed followers. But could one really construct a government, run a country with such idealistic notions? But once those ideals took root in living, functioning institutions, once those notions became a nation, well then, as I said, the revolution could really begin. Not just in America, but around the world, a revolution to free man from tyranny of every sort and secure his freedom the only possible way in this world, through the checks and the balances and institutions of limited democratic government. Checks and balances, limited government. The genius of our constitutional system is its recognition that no one branch of government alone could be relied on to preserve our freedoms. The great safeguard of our liberty is the totality of the constitutional system, with no one part getting the upper hand. That is why the judiciary must be kept independent. And that is why it must also exercise restraint. If our Constitution has endured through times perilous as well as prosperous, it is not simply as a plan of government, no matter how ingenious or inspired that might be. This document that we honor today has always been something more to us, filled us with a deeper feeling than one of simple admiration, a feeling, one may say, of reverence. One scholar described our Constitution as a kind of covenant. It is a covenant we have made not only with ourselves, but with all of mankind. As John Quincy Adams promises, wherever, whenever the standard of freedom and independence has been or shall be unfurled, there will be America's heart, her benedictions, and her prayers. It is a human covenant, yes, and beyond that, a covenant with the Supreme Being to whom our founding fathers did constantly appeal for assistance. It is an oath of allegiance to that in man that is truly universal, that core of being that exists before and beyond distinctions of class, race, or natural origin. It is a dedication of faith to the humanity we all share, that part of each man and woman that most closely touches on the divine. And it was perhaps from that divine source that the men who came together in this hall 200 years ago drew the inspiration and strength to face the crisis of their great hopes and overcome their many divisions. After all, both Madison and Washington were to refer to the outcome of the Constitutional Convention as a miracle, and miracles, of course, have only one origin. No people, said George Washington in his inaugural address, can be bound to acknowledge and adore the invisible hand which conducts the affairs of men more than those of the United States. Every step by which they have advanced to the character of an independent nation seems to have been distinguished by some providential agency. No doubt he was thinking of the great and good fortune of this young land, the abundant and fertile continent given us, far from the warring powers of Europe, the successful struggle against the greatest power of that day, England, the happy outcome of the Constitutional Convention, and the debate over ratification. He knew, too, as he said, that there is an indissoluble union between advantage and duty, and that the guiding hand of Providence did not create this new nation of America for ourselves alone, but for a higher cause, the preservation and extension of the sacred fire of human liberty. That is America's solemn duty. During the summer of 1787, as the delegates clashed and debated, Washington left the heat of Philadelphia and with his trout fishing companion, Governor Morris of Pennsylvania, made a pilgrimage to Valley Forge. 10 years before, his Continental Army had been camped there through the winter. Food was low, medical supplies non-existent. His soldiers had to go half in rags in the killing cold, their torn feet leaving bloodstains as they walked shoeless on the icy ground. Governor Morris reported that the general was silent throughout the trip. He did not confide his emotions as he surveyed the scene of the past hardships. One can only imagine that his conversation was with someone else, that it took more than the form of prayer for this new nation that such sacrifice not be in vain, that the hope and promise that survives such a terrible winter of suffering not be allowed to wither now that it was summer. One imagines that he also did what we do today in this gathering and here. What will always be America's foremost duty, to constantly renew that covenant with humanity, with a world yearning to breathe free, to complete the work begun those 200 years ago. That grand, noble work that is America's particular calling, the triumph of human freedom, the triumph of human freedom under God. And that is perfect timing. Thank you for your
Thank you.
attention.
Do we have any other audience concerns?
Michael Norman.
Michael Norman?
Michael Norman, 188 South Oak Street, here in the great city of London, Ohio. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I would like to thank you, fellows and ladies, but fellows, because you're going to be the voting, for voting this ordinance to put the levy on the ballot. At least I'm kind of I'm hoping you're going to do that. That's the vibe I'm getting. Because once again, you're throwing it to us, the voters out here, to actually make this decision instead of trying to push it through on your own. And I appreciate that, and I'm sure the people appreciate that too. I also want to say that I'm definitely for this tax levy. At first I was a little not sure, but several of the council people, but mainly Councilman Smith, said that we needed to do some research, we needed to find out and educate ourselves on the situation with our fire and EMS. So I did. The first thing I did was pull the budget, which was a record request. Thank you, Amy. But when you do this, you know, you get this big number, and it looks huge. So it kind of, it's like a sticker shock, you know, shock value. So what I had to do from there, and I hope everyone else does too, is I had to compare municipalities that are our size, that have fire and EMS service, and then check their budgets versus our budget. And I think if people do that, and they look and see what these other municipalities are paying for their fire and EMS service, they'll see that even with this levy passed, we are still going to be down at the lower end of these other municipalities. There's a handful that are about $500,000 less a year than we are, but there's a huge amount that are more like $500,000 to even $2 to $3 million more a year on their budget than we are. And these are municipalities that are our size, between 10, 12,000 around the state of Ohio. And also in my research, what I found is some of those municipalities do not have EMS service, and yet their budgets are still as big as ours. So, you know, I'm going to send a shout out to our chief. I think we need to support him. I think he's done a good job with the money that we've had comparatively. Yeah, we've had to bail out here and there, but like I said, if you look at the budget that he's had, it's not like he's taken money and just willy-nilly it. This is money that he's used, he's stretched, he's asked for grants to get equipment. He's done the negotiation for the fire trucks and such and everything that we've gotten. So I think we need to pull together and support our fire and EMS. The other part of that levy is obviously our police department. We need one. I mean, it was temporary back in 84, 89. I always get the year wrong, but you're talking almost 40 years ago. It was a temporary situation. You know, temporary. You know, we need to give our officers a place to go where, one, they can be proud of, two, they can be safe. You know, the chief has said several times there's issues where if you get more than 2 complaints in the building, there's no way to separate them, and that's not a safe situation, especially, you know, like we just heard tonight. We've had one officer shot down, and you know, we need to make sure that we protect our protectors. It is unfortunate that a tax increase has to happen, but you know, we have to pay for the service we get. You know, if we don't pay for, you know, I mean, we're getting great service and we're paying Motel 6 rates right now, is how I feel. We need to at least bring those up to the Marriott or the, you know, the Hyatt maybe level. So that's all I have. Thank you. Have a good evening.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Any other audience concerns, Amy?
No.
All right. All right, on to our committee reports. Start with Mr. Eads.
Thank you. So last night, we did have the Service Committee meeting. There wasn't a lot on the agenda, but there are a couple things we do want to address. Specifically, there's going to be an ordinance coming forward tonight regarding the purchase of the solar-lighted pedestrian signs. The thought process was that would be under state bid. We could get those. We being Bill, Rex, those folks have found out that will not be actually under state bid, so we're going to have to bid this out to purchase the equipment. We still have the funds available left over from putting in traffic lights, so that money's still there. We just have to go into a bid process, so that'll come up as new business later tonight, just to let you know. We can talk about that again later. There was also a discussion that I had asked Mr. Castle at the last meeting just about the grant to tear down the building that they had applied for to remove this building. So that came up last night. The grant's a little less than $500,000. In their plan that was submitted, they had to specify, you know, what they thought it was going to cost to take the building down, how much the building, you know, what the scope was going to be, also some landscaping that was built in for that also. During the discussion last night, just so everybody knows, Brian and I both agreed, Mr. Councilman Robinson, I should say, agreed that there's probably enough issues with that building that could be safety issues, could be real safety issues, that the thought process was if you have the money to take the entire building down, that could cause problems because we're not going to have places for the volleyball and the basketball, and we're not sure how that's going to work out just yet. But removing half the building and building a wall there where the high school started, the gym ends, the high school started from that point, I mean, that could very easily cost more to do that than to take the building down. And there's no guarantee that if you do that, that building's going to last 3 years, 5 years, or whatever, just because of the ongoing issues in the building. So that was discussed at length. There was also just a thought at this point of trying to find a way to build another building. It was not discussed that this would be put into an income tax. That was not discussed. They're just trying to find a way that if council finds the money to build a different building, not nearly as extravagant, but a different building that could house those activities, that they would like to move forward and do some research and bring that to council later. So I'm just letting you all know that because you weren't at the meeting last night, that came up. And I think that's all I have for my part.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Robinson?
I was at the public service as well, so I'll go over our Parks and Rec Director's notes. So he gave us our pool revenues, which are looking great with the projected budget that he was given. So far this year, we're at $44,457 of revenue brought in. Our estimated was $42,000, so we're 105% above our projected budget number. The pool concessions are at $11,100. This is all through July. And then total concession revenues through July are at $14,600. The projected number was $13,000, so we're 112% above our projected numbers for this year. So it sounds like the pool had a really great year. With that, it is coming to an end. Sunday, August 14th is the last day. We did have a lot of questions of why it was the 14th and not Labor Day weekend like it was in the past, and it was stated that it's a staffing issue. Majority of the lifeguards have gone back to either college, and then school starts back the 17th. So with those staffing shortages, we wouldn't be able to staff it. We also talked about maybe opening on the weekends, but as Landon said, the cost to keep the pool maintained throughout the week would cost more than the revenues that would come in keeping it open for just the 2 weekend days. So that was their rationale of why the 14th will be closed. They also had a lifeguard CPR training that the city provided for them. We had 7 lifeguards renew their licenses. That's for 2 years. So 7 of our lifeguards have renewed for next year. Once the season's over, they have additional concrete work around the splash pad. They want to bring up the splash pad to help the loss of water. He's estimating 400 to 600 gallons on a fully functional day that they lose. So with the concrete being lifted, and they can keep that water inside the area. So there was a gutter and downspout installed on the front side of the concession stand. The street department did do that just to help the washout. Merrimack Park, we got great news on that. All the equipment has been installed. So the ribbon cutting ceremony is August 28th at 3 p.m. So that's a great thing. This past weekend, they had the 23rd annual London Wiffle Ball Tournament. They had 91 teams of children and adults participate in that. That's a pretty big event. Outdoor fall youth volleyball, registration is open. It'll be open through the 29th.
Yep.
So that they have different locations where you can find the information to register. So it's outside the Park and Rec office on the table, the city administration office outside of the city building, London Pool during regular operations hours, the London Park and Rec Facebook page, and then the London Park and Rec website, which allows online registration. They will be hosted outdoors this year at Cowling Park. It'll be over by the Ninja Park. There's a little section over there. Other than that, Councilman Eads talked on the other thing that was brought up, so.
And one thing to add, just because I noticed it waiting to come in last night, outside of the city building, right outside of the doors on the right-hand side, there is a box that has those applications or registration forms right there, so anybody can walk up anytime, day or night, and get those.
All right. Thank you, too. Next, we have Mr. Hayes.
Safety Services meeting will be this coming Tuesday, August 9th at 5 PM, be in the building behind, or the office behind us.
All right, Mr. Stahl.
Finance meeting be Monday, the 8th, 6 PM, and as he said, the public safety will be here at 5 PM on
All right.
Tuesday.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Okay, so BPU, there was some questions. I'm getting kind of ahead of myself, but they did drill for water. We did locate water. We were hoping that it would be all good. Unfortunately, it was not, but it's not all bad either. So we're still going to have to run more tests. Good that they were able to find water, though. BPU, or excuse me, the water department, they will be estimating meters for the month of August also. So they did that through July. Carol tried to keep tabs on as many counts as she could to see. She said that most of the estimating went pretty good because instead of doing a couple months, they did 12 months, especially in that high, July is a very high usage month. But we do have some water hydrants that need to be repaired. So they're going to focus quite a bit on that this month, also with getting the meters installed. There are a couple hydrants that definitely need major repair. Most of them, it's very simple things. If they told us that if there was a fire, they pulled up, they could hook into the hydrant, and it would function properly. The good thing is that with the new meters, Carol reported that they've already helped people and notified them that they've had leaks in their house with the water. There's things set up to where, like, if your water's running all night long, it'll notify them. They've already notified those folks, and we're able to help them and save money, so that's a very good thing. Just a reminder, installing the meters ourselves saved us from borrowing $340,000. So I appreciate the water department. We're putting a lot on them. They run at less people than they did in previous years, and we're asking a lot of them. So talk about, there was a boiling water issue. It was very interesting. It was very isolated. But the EPA, what that was from was monthly throughout the city, the water department has to go out to random houses and they get water from water spigots. And so then they submit the test, or they send it off to the EPA. When they get to it, they check it. Well, one of them failed, and the plant, everything tested fine. Our plant is tested 6 times a day. It's tested at night. It's tested every shift. The water's always passed. But this one did fail. The EPA looked into it. They don't know why it failed. It's one thing that was brought up. It literally could have been a dog went over and licked a spigot and got some bacteria on it. It didn't get, they do clean it, spray stuff on the spigot, but it caused it to fail. And with that, I could not believe how much the EPA wanted us to do a boil alert for when you were literally talking like a couple houses were the only ones that had the issue, and the issue was not even from our water plant. It was literally just at that house. But that's all. Everything's already been double checked, passed. Everything is just fine. But that was the issue for boiling water. the BPU office, they did hire another lady. Her name's Nicole Joseph. Carol said she's doing very well. She's been a great addition, catching on very quickly. So we're happy about that. And then just the wastewater, they have a large belt press. That's mainly what does the process with our wastewater. It is getting toward the end of its life, but that's already a part of what the BPU has been looking into, so they know that's coming. But Rick just kind of reminded them at the meeting, so. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you. We do not have any city official reports. And for our old business, we have several tabled items. Will we need to read those?
Mr. President, can I interrupt for a minute?
Yes, go ahead.
Can I ask a question of Rex as part of the city administration?
Yeah.
Or city report? So, at the last meeting, Rick Pennington, at the end of that, questioned if there was a plan in place for the fire department to respond once North Main Street is closed off to the traffic. And I believe, I know that the fire chief sent out a response. Would you like to address that at all now? Is your mic on?
They last about 2 weeks.
Chief Eads has been working with Central Township and Madison County to do their joint services together in case they can't get to somewhere. They've got those sites navigated out. They also have met with the developer that's basically put in a gravel road from, what's the name of the street the mayor lives on? Jacob Lane that goes to 56, and they've got it graded and they've tested that their equipment can get across there. So that's another mechanism that they can get across to 56 to those houses that's there that would have been cut off from where the road's closed. This plan was put into place weeks ago. Whenever he knew that this was coming up, he just didn't make it announced to everybody in the world that we were doing it. But he, took on the responsibility and had that done in advance. And I think he's got everything covered that no one should be in any jeopardy of not having services to them. But thank you.
No, thanks.
Thank you. All right, so we have, again, we have our several tabled items, and we do not need to read those. All right, that's 14622, 14722, and 15122. On for the third reading, ordinance 15222, a motion to read by title or number.
So moved.
Second.
All right, clerk, please read the ordinance.
Ordinance 15222, sponsored by Brian Robinson, and ordinance amending section 1040 of the codified ordinances.
Okay, so this is the third reading. This is to put something in place in case we do ever run into an emergency regarding our water levels. It's a law on watering restriction. We give the Safety Service Director the authorization to declare a water emergency. That's for anything from a water break, any physical, mechanical failure at the water treatment plant, dry or drought conditions, restrictions of water supply by state or federal authorities. And then it has a couple of restrictions. If you, non-essential use of water, non-essential use of water. So it would be watering lawns, the commercial and residential use of water to wash boats, cars, trucks, and other vehicles, filling swimming pools, watering from hydrants, washing sidewalks, driveway porches, and building exteriors, the sterilization, blow-off and testing of water lines, in sewer mains, the burning of paper, trash, wood, and combustible materials. He also gave us a three-step process in which he would follow if we ever do run into this. Step one would be, like we observed earlier this year, it would be sending out a volunteer water reduction along with water conservation tips. Step 2 would be odd and even watering. Means if your address is an odd number, you could water on that day. If it was an even, on the other day. And then step 3 would be institute the law and water restriction ordinance. The ordinance would be lifted when the water emergency is no longer in effect. I know there's been a lot of questions. We talked about this quite a bit last night. You know, one of the big pieces is the dollar amount of the fine, and also the restriction of the safety service director to be able to withhold a emergency call longer than it should be. So I think those are talking points that we do need to talk about, because those are things that have been addressed to us from other individuals.
Yes, Mr. Eads.
Mr. Castle, on number 6, I do have a question about this before we get into some other stuff, because I forgot to ask this last night. In number 6, limiting this, the sterilization, blow-off, and testing of water lines and sewer mains, is that not a city responsibility? So wouldn't that also be, I would think this would be more of a safety issue, that if we felt that we needed to test that, I understand that you get to define this, and this would be something you could limit. You could limit just the watering of lawns, correct? Or you could say, you're going to limit no filling swimming pools also,
Yeah,
right?
correct.
So each one of these things, the list of 7 things, at the point that you make that determination to enact this, then you would then determine which of these things would be applicable at that time.
Exactly. And then in the part of the blow-off and the water hydrants, flushing and so forth, those typically happen in high water usage times of the year. And we've talked a little bit about maybe trying to get those moved to a different time of the year, and I think they're going to try to do that. It's just historically, they've always done it in April and May, and that's when people start filling their pools and so forth. So we're trying to even out the water usage on that. But if we were in the hydrant flushing time and we did encounter emergencies, I would notify the fire department and the water department that those, probably wouldn't have to let the water department know that, but the fire department that is to cease until
Okay.
the emergency's over.
Okay, so we had quite a discussion last night on some of the things. I do want to address a few of these things just so I can get your answer tonight, okay? One of the first points that I brought up was where in section C, it says the safety service director is authorized and directed to establish rules and regulations regarding prohibited water usage restrictions and all of that. And the point that I asked last night, or the question that I asked last night, shouldn't have this been done prior to tonight? And I don't know that it should have been done. It's telling you to do that. This ordinance says you can do that. But you did come tonight with the 3-step process that we had not discussed previous to that. So would you like to address that process at all?
I'm going to be totally reliant on the water department and monitoring the water, which every day we get tower readings as to what the level is of the water. And they are monitoring the usage and so forth. The water department superintendent did come to us, or actually came to a BPU meeting first, and said, I think it's time to institute, I feel like it's time to institute ask the public to voluntarily reduce their water usage on watering lawns and so forth. We didn't do that immediately. We kind of waited and to see if things got better, but, whenever the water levels continually drop an inch, 1.5 feet to 2 feet every night, it's got to be a little, nothing major nervous, but when you see it keep dropping down, you want to try to do something to slow that process down. So that's when we instituted out on our website and on the Facebook page, asking people to please conserve. Also made recommendations of when to water. It really, you water during the heat of the day, you're basically feeding the sun more than you are your plants. So we recommended to water either early morning hours so it can soak into the ground, as opposed to evaporating or in the evening hours. We really never had any inkling of going to step 2. I had those steps already, in my mind of what we wanted to do. The thing that brought this legislation to place was, you know, you're constantly thinking what ifs. And I remember, I think I said something to you earlier, 2013, we had a major breakage in at our water plant. Our water tower went to exactly 0. We had no water left. It was all gone. And we had nothing in place to put restrictions on people when we're trying to fill the water tank back up, to tell people don't use, you know, don't water, don't do things, let us try to get the levels back up before we go back to business as usual as using water. And, you know, but maybe that should have been done in 2013. I was told that many, many years before that, we had another case where almost the same thing happened, but it was I'm not sure exactly, Bill would know what happened, but we basically had to shut the water, you know, we didn't have any water, and, you know, should have done it maybe back then. It's just having something in place if that ever happened. And I didn't ever think that we were at the close enough to go to step 2 in our water situation. You know, God graced us with rainfall, and people didn't have to water their lawns, and somebody figured out how to turn off their sprinkler system that was running 24/7 and using 20,000 gallons a day. Got that figured out, and the water tower started growing in numbers, and we're back up in the high 30s again. You know, maximum's 40, so we're back where we should be. And, you know, this legislation, you know, I wasn't looking for anything to enact. I'm not looking forward to ever enacting it. Hopefully I won't in my tenure. Hopefully not in your guys' tenure either. But I felt like, and the law director who checked to make sure we didn't have anything on the books said, you know, we really should have something on the books in case something ever happened. And that's what this is for.
Okay, just a couple other questions. We discussed last night how you would go about determining if someone violated this.
Yep.
Well, I'll let you tell everyone else.
We have other codes on our books, the violations, and those get reported by neighbors. We have code enforcers. We have police departments. We have sanitation, which would probably be your most reliable source, because sanitation department is seeing every home in this town every week. So that might be a reliable source. The water department's going out, and they're not going to be doing that much in the near future, but they go out and read meters. They're going to be seeing those.
And
So,
then with the
numerous.
new meters too?
The thing that's going to be nice with the new meters is Carol can be the reporter. Carol can go, you know, it's middle of the day, and this house is like using 5,000 gallons and, you know, nothing flat. Something's going on there. We can go check that, see if they're watering or anything that's being restricted at the time. So numerous mechanisms in which to monitor that.
And it was shared last night, at least as part of the discussion, that you probably wouldn't show up and they wouldn't be charged immediately, or that wouldn't happen. It would be, this is a warning. We're seeing water usage here, and
I mean, there
We're
are cases where
restricting that.
somebody may not know that an emergency's been declared, and then at that point, we would say, okay, you need to shut it off. We are under emergency. You're not supposed to be doing this. And, you know, we give them the first try as a mulligan or whatever, but.
okay. And then on section E, let me just talk about section E. Any person who shall violate a provision of this section shall, upon conviction thereof, be subject to a fine of not more than $500. Now, last night, it didn't sound like this was going to be conviction in a criminal offense. So conviction thereof should probably be struck from this period.
You could probably, you know, conviction would be physical evidence that you are actually watering your lawn. But yeah, you could probably change it to clarification of or whatever. But yeah, it's not conviction. It's not going to be it's not going to be a thing where
It's not going to be a criminal act.
No.
And that, you said last night, because it's not on here, that how would you assess that fine?
It would be put on their water bill.
It would be put directly on their water bill. And to me, this is my personal opinion, we discussed it a bit last night. If it's a fine only, because I've looked at misdemeanors, a minor misdemeanor is a fine only, no jail time, and a maximum of $150 fine. An M4, misdemeanor of fourth degree is 30 days, at maximum $250 fine. An M3 is 60 days, $500 fine. An M2 is 90 days, a $750 fine. And an M1 is 180 days and a $1,000 fine. Those are the maximum under a conviction for a misdemeanor. Now, we're kind of throwing this out, but if we're not, my thought is if we're treating this more like a minor misdemeanor, there's no conviction, there's no jail time, then I personally think a fine, me personally, $500 is a pretty steep fine. I know we had a discussion last meeting that President Comer thought that should be raised, and I know Mr. Robinson and I discussed this right before the meeting, and he feels that that's an appropriate amount. My personal thought is it's too much, but I'd be happy to hear discussion, or if you have more questions for Mr. Castle.
Yeah, and we have more questions.
I do believe the legislation says up to, it doesn't stipulate.
Of not more than.
Okay, so
Yeah, so no.
that means that it's going to be variable. Repeat offense, as you repeat offense, it's going to go up higher. Second piece would be, we have things in place where people go to court, they get convicted, they get charged a $50 fine. They don't do anything. They just continue to leave their junk, windows empty, roof caving in, because it's going to cost them more money to do it. So they'd rather pay a $50 fine.
Yep.
So if you don't have, in that, and unfortunately, that's regulated by the Ohio Revised Code. We cannot change that. In this case, these are things that we can set and we can do ourselves because it's not going through the judicial system. It's been my experience when I was on council, because I would always ask, why is this person not doing what they're supposed to be doing? Like you guys are saying currently about different things. And it's not totally that we don't have code enforcement, we do, and the more hours that you guys have given to that department is going to be greatly appreciated and greatly used, but people would rather pay the $50 fine and go to court and pay the court costs than clean their stuff up. And then there has been situations where I've went back and reviewed some of them, that they go to court and they suspend the fine. They don't even charge them. They just make them pay a portion of the court costs and they're done. So if there's no bite or anything that's going to make it uncomfortable for that person, they're not going to heed, what we're wanting them to do. So that's why I think that amount should be on there, and it's not going to be a first offense is going to be, you need to shut your water off, we're under an emergency. Second offense would be, we're going to charge you a fine. It's not going to be $500 on the second offense unless he's out there with a fire hose watering everybody's lawn and using tens of thousands of gallons at a time or something that would warrant that, but it's not going to be 500 right off the bat. It's so you can progress the fines accordingly to try to get some effects to the person that's offending it.
Right, and that's why I agree to that too, because fines are put in place to deter. You definitely want to have a fine in place that would actually deter someone from doing what you don't want them to do. And like you said, $50 fine, $100 fine, they'll pay that or ignore it, but they're more likely to pay more attention to it if it's a little bit higher fine, especially, like you said, it can progress. So it's not necessarily $500 at once. Councilman Robinson and I, we were talking here, that's what we were talking about just now, because we thought maybe we should also amend this. First of all, amend the legislation to add the steps that you've mentioned here, and then also to add the warning phases, like first time is, a verbal warning, and then second time, maybe a fee schedule along with some, like the warnings.
Yeah, you guys can, it's whatever you wish to put on there, that's fine. I told Greg and Brian last night that the ordinance that's in front of you is basically copied after another municipality in Ohio that has exactly the same thing in place. So I was just trying, if it was good for one, I thought it'd be good for us, so, we had to start somewhere, and that's what I started with.
Yep, and I agree, we do need something on the books. So, and yes.
So when you get this, if you violate and you get this fine, it'll be added to your bill correct?
Right, he said to your water bill.
Okay, so, you know, if that happens and let's say, I'm just saying, you're on limited income, yes, and you pay your regular water bill, but you have this fine on there, will this fine then be able to be, if you don't, you know, if you don't pay it all at once, is your water going to be turned off because of this fine?
Yeah, I'm not sure how that works. I'm not sure how soon they pay your, turn your water off after you haven't paid your bill.
Because I mean, you know, there's, if,
Well, you know, the whole,
If you-
we got a lot of
I know
scenarios
what you're,
here.
I know what you're saying.
not-
Yeah, what I'm
It-
saying is we're talking hypotheticals, but the bottom line is if we are under an emergency where it's important for us to conserve water for fire purposes, so to make sure they have hoses that work and the city, you know, can handle emergencies and our water levels are to the point, it would be, you know, really good for the community to pull together and say, okay, I understand we're under water restriction, so let me not wash my car today. You know,
Well-
let me not water my plants. And then we wouldn't even, then we could totally avoid all of the fines altogether.
Right, but I'm just saying, if the fine is assessed, will that be considered part of your bill? And will it determine whether you get your services turned off?
Yeah,
If you
well,
pay your regular
do you know that,
services-
Anthony, or?
I don't think
I don't-
I could say that it's impossible that it would never happen, but as far as I know, nobody's water ever gets shut off if they're paying their bill.
Right.
And it is, usually it's months, because we have so many people. If we shut off everybody's water that was behind on their bill, I can't even imagine how many households it would affect.
Right, I understand
Yeah.
that, but that's right now with people getting behind their
Yeah.
bill.
Yeah,
Because
so-
they're behind.
Right, but I mean,
But to add the fine to
usually as
that-
long as they're paying, it's not gonna get shut off.
Okay, I mean, is that something you?
But I'm not gonna
would-
say it's
I mean,
impossible. I mean,
Normally on people that are gonna be on fixed income, do you think they're gonna be using the extra water, which would cause an extra cost? in
You
its-
don't
in
know.
place?
I don't
I
know.
mean, if we wanna talk hypotheticals, I mean, normally if I know my bill's $30 a month, I'm not gonna go out and use the excess water that could cause it to be $35 a month. I mean,
Right,
we're
but
kinda
if,
making
but
it
if
sound
it,
like it's
but
a
if you,
self-
but
it's
if
a-
you put that in your
it's a
budget, if
selfish
you
want.
budget yourself that you know you're going to water your lawn every day, you know what your bill's going to be, and then for some reason, you do get this fine.
I feel like we're
I
arguing.
understand this, I get this fine, and I understand the fine, and yes, we should do the fine, but I'm just
Second
saying-
offense, there's a fine.
So they get a warning and then the second offense. I'm just saying, it would be, I just want, you know, is there a different category you could put that in on the bill to where it's not going to have their bill cut off? To
Well, I
give them,
think you-
to give
we-
them time
we-
to make that payment.
So I'm pretty sure we would need to leave it where it is. Because let's just say, so we're talking all kinds of, hypotheticals, and it's a good question. If eventually someone got so delinquent on it, we would send it over and have it taken out of their property taxes. But I mean, they have to get so far behind. Some of the delinquent bills that they've went after was over $1,000 to $2,000.
And we just got
And you
those a
think,
couple months
yeah, and you
ago.
think about how many months that is of not paying your water bill and, yeah. So, I mean, technically, I would guess that could happen, but do I think it'll ever happen? Probably not. Like I said, as long as people are working to get their bills paid, nobody in the water department wants to run out and shut people's water off. So, and Carol, I know, could attest to that. If anybody wanted to talk to her, she'd tell you, we have a lot of people that don't pay their bills. They get way behind, but if they're making an effort, they still got the water. Yeah.
Cool, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So just a couple things. I'm glad you guys have all discussed this. I think the idea of going back and putting in progressive punishment and all of that in this ordinance is probably not necessary if we're authorizing the safety service director to establish rules and regulations. I'm just hoping that he would do that. It would maybe show in those rules and regulations that the first offense would be just a warning, the second offense, and then have the progressive fines instead of adding all of that to this would be my thought. I do think we do need this in case it is necessary, and it's probably been neglected for a long time. So that's my thought about this. You've answered all my questions. Thank you.
I'd like, and I'll just give my opinion, is, again, this is for emergency.
Right.
This is not for day-to-day, this is not for little things that could, that don't affect people. This could have a major catastrophic effect that could literally even affect lives. And I think that putting the trust in the safety service director to say, I like the safety service director being able to say, whether or not he wants to give a warning or not. Simply because if we have someone that, we put up a water emergency and they go out and they're filling up a gigantic swimming pool, they absolutely deserve to receive in my opinion, a $500 fine to be so selfish and neglectful. Now, somebody accidentally leaves their, waters their lawn or something, Rex goes out there. I like him having that option to say, hey, just a warning, no problem. You forgot, whatever. I like that. I think we could sit here and nitpick it forever, and we are never going to get this to be a perfect legislation. That's a good question Michael has. I mean, I don't know how we would ever be able to get this legislation to be absolutely perfect to cover every single concern. This is for an emergency. We want people to conserve their water, be respectful and responsible. To me, that's what the fine does. That's exactly how the legislation is written. That's the intended purpose of it. That's exactly what it does. And I strongly believe no safety service director wants to tell people, stop using your water or you're going to receive a fine, and wants to go out and pass out fines, because people are not going to be happy about it. I know I would not be happy about it. So that's my two thoughts.
All right, and then I also spoke with a car wash owner here in town, and some of his concerns were, how many times has it happened in the past where water's been restricted, and Rex said maybe twice. And he was, concerned about maybe how long was that duration when it did happen. How long did you say one of them? 1 week? Okay, and he said, and he wanted to know if that would affect any other companies that use a lot of water equally, or would it just be enforceable on car washes? Where his sole purpose is using water and washing cars, where, another company may wash vegetables and, have lots of employees and flush toilets and sinks and delis and everything like that. He wants to know if it would be enforced equally across the board for other businesses, because, he thinks in actuality they may use more water than he does at a car wash. And then also, he said, of course, he would, he wants to cooperate with the community, and he said he would be all in. He thinks we should all work together, and he wouldn't see any problem with a restriction that's on for maybe a couple days or so. But after like maybe a week or something like that, then it could become more of an issue, since that's the only way that he would make those dollars in his business. So would you have anything to say to that?
You should probably take the mic over with you.
He's getting steps.
Hey, let's get this
Just thinking,
steps in.
Greg.
There you go.
First of all, about only putting a restriction in for a couple days, we have no control over that.
Right.
I mean, we've not really seen a great drought that we've had years and years past, but there's been times where we've not had rain for a whole month. So I have no control over that, and that usually causes a large consumption of water. So I can't really say that an emergency, if you enact an emergency, that it's going to be over in 2 days. I can't say that. It'd be nice if it was, but I can't necessarily say that. It's going to be harder to monitor some of the other businesses that uses water, per se, in their constructions and so forth. The only bad thing is in our ordinance, we're telling people that they can't wash their car or boats at their residence. And if we, if they just all of a sudden then they go start forming a line and just go wash it at the car wash, we've kind of defeated our purpose in trying to restrict water usage. And again, this is something that I hope we never have to enact. I don't anticipate it. I just think it's something, if we ever have a major emergency, that we need to have in place. And I've only, in my lifetime here in London, I've only witnessed it once, and evidently there was a time that it happened during my lifetime and I didn't even know it. So that's how often it's happened. So I think we're getting kind of nervous about fines and so forth when, in my honest opinion, this should only been enacted twice in 60-some years. So
Wow. Yeah, so,
it's not something that's going to be enacted a lot.
all right.
If I may. Thank you. Hello. Again, coming from a regulatory entity that ensured compliance on a national level, and I won't even go into who I worked with and what I did. The idea that Councilman Smith brought about, that I wouldn't want to hamstring the implementation of how this is done. What the key is that the documentation for any implementation is clear, concise, that shows that there's no problems with how it's enforced, maybe against somebody who ticked you off, okay, because their cat ran across your property, and somebody else who perhaps you liked, you allowed them to use water, or maybe to consider maybe a percentage. Again, these are all theoretical positions that might occur. The documentation is what's going to drive this. As long as your documentation is clear, your protocol for how you enact it is good, there's no problem with this legislation as it's put forward with council. That's my layman position.
Thank you.
My biggest question was kind of with the last water issue that we had there. I was one of the streets that was supposed to be boiling, but I didn't catch that till just the other day. How are we notifying people about these emergency situations?
You want me to address that?
Yeah.
The city instituted a system called One Call. We've put out numerous notices to the water customers that in their water bill. We put it in our quarterly newsletter to register with One Call. That's how people were notified of this, was through that system. If you don't subscribe to that system, you don't get the notice. The only way you'll get it other than that would be once a week when you get your weekly newspaper. And unfortunately, with us only having a weekly publication, which does not go to every citizen in this town, it's really hard to get information out. So we strongly recommend that you subscribe to the BPU's One Call system. You can get your messages one of two ways, either through a phone text, or three ways actually: phone text, phone call, or email. So there's three mechanisms in which you can get that. And I know a lot of people are hesitant about signing up to it because I don't want to get a bunch of phone. How many times have we sent something out in a year? Three times maybe. So it's not something that we use every whip stitch. We only use it in situations where we think the residents needs to know the information. And definitely in the boil alert, that's when people needed to know.
Could we look into maybe larger emergency street signs, at least over by the courthouse, or something that says, hey, check water shortage, check something?
Well,
Kind of gives them the idea also, just in case they don't have that.
that's an idea. We do have two of the street signs. I'll make that recommendation to them. They would have to coordinate that with the police department and the street department. They're in charge of that, but that could be done. That could be done, yeah. Okay.
All right. You had something.
You can call the BPU office from 8 o'clock in the morning till 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and they'll gladly set you up. I don't think you can do it online, no.
All right, have a question.
Why should I have to subscribe? I'm a resident of the city, you have my phone number, written water through my water. So you should be contacting us, period, if there's a boil alert.
You should subscribe to one call. You don't have to do it. You should, here's the thing. There are such things as laws that we are, if you sign that, you're consenting that we can call you and send you those texts. We're not supposed to send out unsolicited texts and calls without your permission.
You aren't solicited to tell a person that has maybe a 3-year-old kid that drinks water that he cannot drink that water because it's not your responsibility to tell him to boil.
There's that, but do you, I mean, I understand your feeling and everything. For you to say, I don't want to sign up for something which would make things so much easier.
I'm saying we should not have to be made to sign up.
Well, do you realize how long it would take them to look up all the people that's affected and then to sit down and start calling and trying to call and leave messages and so forth? It's all about number of
Now,
people.
Rex, you just said something. You said you have to get permission to.
I'm assuming that we have to have permission.
Yeah, because you get permission when they sign up on that saying, because I know I've had times before where they say, okay, if you want this, then you agree to have a phone call, you agree to text messaging, rates may apply, you agree to this. So I would imagine that signing up for that, you're going to agree to be contacted in a certain way, where you can't just unsolicitedly just contact people.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I didn't hear you. No, you don't have to sign up for a fine. The fine is, the fine would be charged if you get a warning and then you get another instance. Did you
I
hear him?
think the quickest answer would be, if your house is on fire, do you want the fire department to have water to put the fire out at your house? Okay, but if it's impossible because we do not have rain beyond our government's control, you want the water to put it out. We're not asking a lot when we say stop watering your lawn so we can put fires out. Yeah, do you know how much that would cost? It would be astronomical to privatize a water department. To privatize the water department and all those other things, yeah. I can promise you, it would be an astronomical cost. Your water bill would skyrocket. I can guarantee it, because if we do it basically at cost and it's privatized, they want to make a profit, right? Yeah. Yeah, if it's privatized, it'd be astronomical. I can't hear everything you're saying.
I
I'm sorry,
can't hear
I'm
you.
trying to.
Could you use a microphone so we could? Well, because it's recorded, so people that are watching would like to hear what you're saying as well.
Yeah, I
So
like,
you're saying
I
you
like
would
my
like to
water
see us-
bill being lower.
I think, going to build a police station if we need it, and,
There you go.
No more.
So you said you would prefer that we look into privatizing water? You said and police?
He's,
Okay. Oh, you're saying if we need a police station, then we should look at privatizing like water, things like that, to save money. So, okay. So you're saying privatize, we should look at privatizing like water, BPU, things like that, to give the city more money, so then we wouldn't have to put a levy on to pay for a police station and fire EMS, things like that. Yeah. I'm not sure that privatizing the water would save enough money to fund a police and fire and EMS station.
Mr. President, I do have another question.
Yes.
Mr. Castle, I know you haven't been in that position forever, but how did we contact people 3 years ago, 5 years ago? I mean, when there was that type of a situation, how did we do that before the one-call system?
It was on TV for one thing,
Oh, well,
because the National Guard was called in. They had to bring water in here. And it was on Channel 10, it was on Channel 6.
Well, that was when we lost the entire supply.
Right.
But we've had some boil alerts since then, right? I mean, boil alerts happen when a
Yeah.
line breaks sometimes or that, but
I guess I wouldn't know the total answer to that. Since I've been here, we've had one call, so I don't really know.
what they did before
I'm
that.
assuming that they would probably have to, the water department would probably have to go to door and knock on houses and tell them that we're under a boil alert. That would be the only way of doing it.
okay.
And he did have a good suggestion to use the sign too, to get help
That-
get the
that
word.
is a-
Because I know I saw it online, and that's the only way that I knew. Otherwise, I wouldn't have even known. But putting the sign out, because you're probably out and about in the city a little more often. So I think that is a good idea. So hopefully you can take a look into that. All right, so let's see here. We are on ordinance 15222, and
I'd like to
Anything
make a
else?
motion to amend the process to 152.
okay.
Just add that to
To amend it to add the steps.
three-step process.
The three-step process of, okay, from the Safety Service Director. And we have a list of that, and that was send out a volunteer water reduction along with water conservation tips, and then even and odd watering, and then shrubs and trees may be watered any day of the month, and then institute lawn watering restrictions ordinance. The ordinance will be lifted when the water emergency is no longer in effect. So we want to add that. Can you get a motion to
We have a
amend?
motion.
Or can we get a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Clerk, could you please take the roll call for amendment?
Eads,
Yes.
Robinson,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Stahl,
Yes,
Smith.
Yes.
Okay, and a motion to adopt
as amended.
as amended, correct?
Second.
Who was one?
Did you get the
Yes.
first one? Okay, first and second. John Stahl
John and Mark.
first, yep, and second. Please take the roll call for adoption.
Robinson,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Stahl,
Yes,
Smith,
Yes.
Okay, 15222 has been adopted. On to ordinance 15322.
Hey,
Oh, go ahead.
Eads.
Greggy's.
Oh, did
I
you?
Yeah.
thought I was-
Oh, forgot Greg.
Yes.
Okay, now we've got it. Okay.
Hey,
We still had it either way.
You had
but-
enough.
All right. Want to make sure everybody's included. All right, now on to ordinance 15322. A motion to read by title or number.
So moved.
second.
Second, clerk, please read the ordinance.
Ordinance 15322, sponsored by Josh Peters. An ordinance to increase the municipal income tax by 0.40% per annum for a continuing period of time commencing January 1st, 2023, of which increase 1/4% per annum shall be used for the purposes of providing funds to pay costs of acquiring, constructing, furnishing, equipping, improving, maintaining, and repairing municipal fire department facilities, to pay general operating expenses of the fire department, and to pay any expenses and debt service charges for the debt incurred in connection therewith, and 0.15% per annum shall be used for the purposes of providing funds to pay costs of acquiring, constructing, furnishing, equipping, improving, maintaining, and repairing municipal police department facilities, to pay general operating expenses of the police department, and to pay any expenses and debt service charges for debt incurred in connection therewith, and declaring an emergency.
Okay. And Josh is not here this evening. Would someone from the public safety want to cover this, or is everyone pretty familiar with this by now, that this is for the levy, and we are under time constraints as well for this, in order to get it approved, to get it on the ballot. And I am glad to see that we're putting this in the hands of the community again. to let them decide, and we're not deciding for them, but they decide if this is something that they want. So this is our chance to put that on the ballot and let the community decide, which they should. Anyone have any questions on this or anything to add?
I do.
Yes.
Mr. Castle, when this first came up, I believe that the city financial advisor said he was going to look at this and make sure this was going to work. Have you had any communication about this since then?
When it was first asked, I went to him, and he gave us the numbers. He said that everything looked okay as far as the loan part is concerned. He can't really attest to what the fire department needs. But the loan, the percentage should be able to handle the debt service as long as it doesn't exceed the 10.5 or whatever the amount was that the loan was going to be. And I met with talked with the chief, and he met with the needs assessment person, and they will make adjustments to the constructed site so that it will stay within the $10.5 million price range.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Good information. All right, any further questions on 15322?
Move to adopt.
Okay, motion to adopt
Second.
and a second. Clerk, please take the roll call for adoption.
Robinson,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Stahl,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Eads.
Yes.
Okay, 15322 has been adopted. On to Resolution 15422, motion to read by title or number.
So moved.
Second.
All right, clerk, please read the resolution.
Resolution 15422, sponsored by Josh Peters. A resolution to place the issue of increasing the municipal income tax by 40 hundredths of 1% per annum for a continuing period of time as provided in ordinance number 15322 on the ballot at the election to be held on November 8, 2022, and directing the Board of Elections in Madison County, Ohio to conduct such election and declaring an emergency.
Okay, and this is the legislation requesting to put that on the ballot. Any questions here?
Move to adopt.
Okay,
Second.
move to adopt in a second. Clerk, please take the roll call for adoption.
Hayes,
Yes.
Stahl,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Eads.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
Okay, so 15422 has passed, and that will be on the ballot in November. On to new business, Resolution 16922, a motion to read by title or number.
So moved.
Second.
All right, clerk, please read the resolution.
Resolution 16922, sponsored by Brian Robinson, a resolution authorizing the Safety Service Director to advertise for bids and enter into a contract for the purchase of pedestrian crosswalk equipment.
So we spoke about this earlier. It's not to exceed 190,000. The state bid wouldn't cover that all, so we have to go out and look for bids. This is just giving our safety service director the opportunity to go out and advertise for bids to get the equipment bought.
Okay.
I move that we adopt.
Second.
Well, we'd have to suspend the three reading
Yeah,
rule.
we have to
can't
suspend the
suspend.
three
We
reading.
can't suspend.
Oh, we can't.
Under
Yeah, we have to
business,
leave
you
it
can't
on.
do
So we'll just have
Leave it
to
on.
leave that on until next time.
Okay, that's right.
Yep. So we just had our first reading for that, but hopefully next time we'll have everyone here, so we'll be able to move forward with that and get that moving, so we can stay ahead of pricing as well. All right, on to roundtable. We'll begin with Mr. Smith.
Just like to thank everyone for coming out tonight. Please vote yes for the levy. We get a lot for our money through this levy. Our fire department and EMS, what they've been doing. London's taxes are very low. I understand they're going up, but we always fight for them to stay as low as possible. Want to say thank you to the Merrimack Miracle Group. The park looks phenomenal. Very excited to see it coming along and just all the great things that are happening around the city. Then I do want to say thank you to Central Township, working with Chief Eads just to help make sure while the repairs are being done on 56, we can keep everybody safe. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Stahl.
Also, thank everyone for coming out. And we're covering a lot of different things anymore, and we're getting cities moving forward. And we ask a lot of questions, and it's good. We're getting a lot of answers. And I'm glad people ask questions. It's kind of nice It's things you don't think about. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Mr. Hayes?
I'd like to thank everybody for coming out. I echo all of Mr. Smith's comments. I'd like to thank all city employees for their hard work. We've got great employees, we've got a great group of people here. I've just got one little thing that come up today. I was out driving around, and if you get a chance, Rex, if you would go over and look in front of Shan's, there are weeds coming out of the street. There's weeds in front of his place. At the corner, right across from the courthouse, there's a law office. There's a tree growing up out of the basement, up the side of the building, which really ticked me off. And then right where we're gonna have the entertainment platform, there's weeds all around the curbs. It looks very unsightly. It's not a good image for us to put out to the public. We need to get these people to do something about their properties. If they're not gonna do anything about them, then I'll go do them myself if I have to. I'll volunteer to go do it. It looks trashy. Something's gotta be done. There's no sense in this. I mean, we make them take care of their yards and everything else. They need to take care of the front of their businesses. And we'll stop right there. God bless London and the city and the people who live in it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Robinson?
I just want to thank everybody for coming out. I don't have a whole lot, other than I didn't announce public service will be September 7th, at 6 p.m. in the office behind us.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Eads?
Well, we have some new faces tonight, or people we haven't seen very often. I'm glad they came tonight and voiced their opinion. I do want to share this. On a week ago, or 8 days ago, on July 27th, we had some pretty heavy rains that hit that evening. A lot of rain in a short period of time. I was a little concerned about my office, so I went to check the basement there. It was fine. But I drove around for a bit. I just wanted to see how water was moving. While I was out and about, Josh Peters and I received a message from Joel McCoy, who stated that he had raked out the drains by his house on New Hampshire and that there was no water going down the drains. And he said, I'm not really complaining. I understand there's other things to fix, but the water in my basement is unacceptable on every level. Just keep this in mind. So when I responded to him, I thanked him for cleaning out the drains, because I think if more people, our residents, kind of brings up what Rich just said, if you see that the grate there is full of debris because of a rain, if you clean that out, it's going to help it. It's not going to pool up. It'll allow the water to move a little better. So I thanked him for doing that. And I said that because we had a camera now, that I'd be willing to reach out to the street department just to see if they could check it. So the next morning, I called the street department, left a message, didn't speak to someone specifically. And 2 or 3 hours later, I got another message from him. He said, much appreciated. Thanks. Thanks for the quick responses. I'm typing, the water department is jetting out the drains. Please pass along my and my neighbor's appreciation to the water department. Well, it turns out it was the street department. Street and sewer? Oh, okay. So, yes. But I just want, and I called Rex that afternoon and said, I want to thank you. And he actually wasn't aware of it yet, because they got the call, they went and did it. So, I said, I just wanted to call and say thank you for getting them out there and making sure that they went out to at least check it. I don't know if they fixed the problem, but they at least looked at it. And I think the people that live there are appreciative that someone came to look at it, and that they were hurt a little bit, that someone came and looked when there was a problem, not when there wasn't a problem. So I just wanted to thank Mr. McCoy for letting us know, and I wanted to thank the street department and the sewer department for going out there and taking a look at that so quickly.
All right.
That's all I have.
Thank you. All right. Thanks again for everyone coming out, all of your input. We do appreciate hearing from you, because it's a different perspective from some of the perspectives that we have, and that's what we want to hear. We want to hear from the community, because we are here for you. Even all the questions you have and everything. And then remember also too, we live in the city just like you. So we deal with a lot of these issues just like you do. You know, I lost a hot water heater, water in my basement too, came all up, and over in my business, one of our classrooms just covered with water. We lost rugs and toys and shelves and everything. It happens. I think we all kind of get that, and we would like to see something. I know Mr. Eads had an idea of a basement program. Are you still discussing that, the basement program?
It hasn't really come back up, but it will. It needs
Yeah,
to.
because that would be nice, and I'm sure a lot of people would appreciate that. But thank you for everyone, and if nothing else, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.